Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of Pop Culture. I'm your host, 24 Eyes, and this evening I got a pretty cool guest. Here on Pop Culture, we like to promote things that we like. There's plenty of detractors out there that talk about all the things that suck around us, that grind out our lives, but we like to be positive, and we like to make positive impacts and bring you cool people. And tonight the guest that I have on is a very cool person. He's a musician, he's a writer, he's an artist. He's got an amazing project that has an ash can that's already on the low, sold 170 copies. Um, the one and only Joe M Sonntag. How are you, sir?
What's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, doing great.
I'm doing
Great
great
to
too.
have you here, man.
Yeah, I'm glad that I can make this one. Because if
Mm-hmm.
people don't remember, I was supposed to be on like maybe a month ago or something, and I got like stupid sick. Like it wasn't like it wasn't the coof or anything, but it was allergies. Like it was horrible, and I had to cancel that show, and it sucked because I was actually really looking forward to doing this. So made it
That's
back
right.
now.
We did a little recovery stream, but it's been a hot week for the channel, so I'm excited because we had the Diaz brothers on on Tuesday, and then
Good
today,
guys.
yesterday we had on Gina Lovely, the porn star, and today we have Joan
Uh,
Sontag, and I wanted to get into it with you because you're not just an artist, but you're also like a musician.
yeah, yeah. I was in a band for almost a decade in between doing art. We were a professional independent band, so much like what I'm doing now with comics. But yeah, we toured the United States as much as we could. Fun. It was a metal band, original music. I got to meet some really cool, uh, big names in the metal community. Yeah, it was a good time, man. I had a lot of fun. Like I just, as much as sometimes as I wonder if I just kept doing art uh, and didn't take that 10-year break where I might be, there was so many experiences within the music life that I led that I would not want to give up for anything. Like life-changing stuff. And I got to see the country too.
Yeah,
That's what I loved about it the most, going on tour and just going from city to city, just you and the guys, it was a bonding experience when it comes to the band. Because when you're out on the road, it's like you only have each other to take care of. Like your brother's got your back, you got your brother's back, whether you're being drunk and stupid in a bar or, drunk and stupid doing other stuff, it's you guys, as a unit out there. So it was a good time, really, really good time.
well, that's amazing. Okay, so where did it all start though for you? You said regional. Where did your region? What part of the earth are you from, sir?
I'm from Michigan. I still live in Michigan. I grew up in a small town called Gobles. Uh, but the where I started, well, all right, let me backtrack for a second. So I started drawing when I was 8 years old, or where somewhere around there, and I got really into comics probably when I was about 10, and decided I really wanted to be an artist probably when I was about, I don't know, maybe 11 or so. I was like that was it. That was my dream. Um, got really heavy into comics. I had a friend at the time whose name was also Joe, and he was just a really incredible artist for his age, or at least I thought so. And he was a year older than me, and he was like my idol. I wanted to be just like him. So I, learned how to draw from him, so to speak. Like he showed me like kind of the ropes. Like he had the bought the book, how to draw the Marvel way, and kind of gave me some
Yeah.
lessons in that. And I started drawing from that, and I just took over just doing it. Like I found that like such a love for drawing and for comics, the imagination, storytelling, all that. And I'd spend hours and hours in my room where my mom would have to kick me out to go outside and play with my brothers, because I'd just be at my either at my drawing table or on the floor reading comics. And that's what I wanted to do. That was my first love, and I ended up coming back to it. But during that time, I also met a lot of other friends that were musicians. And I have to say this, for growing up in a small town in Michigan that no one's probably ever heard of, I met probably two of the best musicians I've ever heard. One of my good friends, Matt Williams, who was one of the original guitarists in my band, Phenomenal guitarist, just a talent from the get go. From like 12 years old, like when he picked up a guitar, he was just somebody that could handle it, and within no time was playing like Metallica. And then my good friend Joe Earl, who was the original drummer in my band as well, was just a talented dude. Still is, and it's crazy. Just from that small town, I met two guys that would be lifelong friends, and also joining me on some adventures on the road.
Mm. I did too. Okay, so you're from Michigan. I'm from Ohio. That was kind of a similar thing. I'm not a musician, but I had a lot of musician friends growing up. I just wasn't up to their speed. By the time like I got to meet a lot of those guys, they were already too proficient to play. Like it wasn't time for me to catch up with them with what I was plunking on. Even like a lot of them being in like the punk scene, and but I do like traveling around with musicians and having friends that are musicians and stuff because you get the opportunity to meet a lot of like really cool people, you know, and you get to it's just like a different kind of perspective because I like so many different kinds of genres of music, and
Yeah,
you just get a different feeling and a different like look into a human soul like based on how they create their art, their music.
the music community is really really cool. I met a lot of awesome people, uh, not only in bands but the fans. People that would come out and support you at when you're playing tiny little bars shoved in the corner, uh, trying not to be too loud. But a lot of people would see you for the first time, and if they legitimately like you, and that was one of the things that I really liked about the music fans. Like they didn't care if you were a signed band or if you were a local band. If you sounded good, they wanted to come hear you play, and they come back, and then they bring a friend, and then they would bring friends. It was just a really good word of mouth kind of movement, and those people were always cool. They get to know the band, and then you'd have drinks with them, you'd see them, smoke with them or whatever. We would have communities around the country. Specifically, we had a really tight community in Goshen, Indiana. We had a fan base there that were just crazy loyal. They were
Yeah.
one of our first fan bases when we started kind of branching out of Michigan, and we came to their small town, and they loved us and they wanted us to come back. And every time we came back, they would pack out the small bars and just be like these crazy shows, and we'd have like these crazy parties afterwards, or we'd have cookouts before the show. It was a really big family atmosphere. It One of the things I really miss about music is the camaraderie between the band and the fans. I mean, but a lot of them became friends too. So they're like friends fans. But and you would meet people like that all throughout the country. We had pockets in Oklahoma and Texas and all these other states that would same thing. We'd come to town. They'd have parties. They put us up. They'd feed us, and it was a really good time. Really,
Never
really
before.
good people. Good people.
Mm. Do you have any crazy tour stories like any breakdown stories or like near miss show stories or maybe like you almost electrocute yourself on stage or something?
Well, yeah, there's well,
That you can tell.
we did we did a lot of naughty things on the road, so I gotta be careful what I say, not incriminate too many people. Um, I will say that there was this one time. So I said earlier, my friend Joe Earl was the original drummer in the band, and he ended up after being in the band for a couple years, wanted to do something else. So he ended up leaving the band, and we brought in this guy from Indianapolis. His name was Nathan Carabao, and it was just a powerful drummer, speed, just animal on the kit. He added a lot to the band because it was a slightly different style drummer than Joe was, but he had kind of a checkered past with the authorities. So, unbeknownst to us, when he joined the band, he actually was not allowed to leave Indiana, but he would
Mm.
come up every weekend to practice and to learn the songs. And one of the first times we go to play a show, we weren't doing a tour thing, but we were just trying to pick up some extra shows. And we had a show booked with Soulfly in Cleveland.
Oh, nice.
I can't remember the name of the venue. Anyway, but that's not important. But so we're heading to Cleveland, and of course, back in the day, all we did was get in the van, and then we just smoke a bunch of weed, get real high, just listen to music and drive. Well, our bass player at the time, Brian, had a medical marijuana card, so he was fine, And we were like, all right, well, if we get pulled over, we'll just say it's his,
Yeah.
and we'll be covered, no big deal. So we, young and dumb, I guess, but we would just drive around bogging that van out, and of course, we drive by a state boy, and we're speeding or whatever, so he pulls us over, and Nate starts freaking out because he's like, dude, they can't read my license. They cannot read my license. He's like, I'm gonna go to jail. They're gonna take me to jail. Like if they know who I am. And we're just like, what the fuck, dude? I was like, he's serious? So we hid his license in a part of the van so they couldn't be found. And a police officer came through. He opened up the door. And, of course, it stunk like weed. And we gave our excuse that it was all Brian and stuff like that. And so we gave him our licenses, and we're cooperating. We always cooperated with the police. We got pulled over quite a bit, and actually, I'll tell you what, we had a lot of good interactions with the cops on the road. Surprisingly enough, they were really cool with us most of the time. But Nathan wouldn't give him his license, so he's like, I'm gonna need you to step outside the van. So he takes him outside the van, takes him back, and puts him in his car. And we're sitting there, and we're just like, fuck, like, he's going to jail. We're not gonna be able to play this show. Like, this is insane. He comes back to us and he's like, all right, guys. He's like, I need you to be straight with me. He's like, I know I can't, he's not giving me his name. And there's got to be a reason why he's not giving me his name. What's his name? We're look around, and I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, his first name's Nate. I was like, his last name, I don't know. It's like Caraballo, something like that. He'd only been in the band for like a couple weeks. So we made this excuse that he was just like this last minute hire to come play the show, and then we didn't really know too much about him. He wasn't too happy about that at all.
I bet not.
He goes back to the car, and we're just sitting there. We're like, fuck, like this is, he's going to search the van. He's going to pull us all out. Like, this is not a good day for us. Like, this is bad. And we're sitting there trying to talk about what we're going to do. And Nate comes and pops in the van. And we're like, what's up, man? And he's like, go, dude, just go. And we're like, what do you mean go? And he's like, dude, he let me go. Let's go. And so the cop takes off and just drives away. And we're like, what happened? And he was like, dude, he was looking me up, trying to find out who I was. And he got a call about this Charger that was driving like, 100 some odd miles an hour. And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, this is your lucky day. He's like, get the fuck out. And he got out and he took off to go after this fucking car that was flying down the road. And so we got off of that, which was nice. The luckiest thing in the world. And then we go to the show, and it turns out that our manager fucked up on booking the show, and we didn't even get to play it. So we drove all the way to Cleveland after all of that and didn't get to even play the show. So we drove all the way back home. It was a really fucked up day. But yeah, that was stuff happens on the road. There's a lot more other stuff that I could talk about. That's
Like,
probably the cleanest one.
Maybe for the book someday.
Yeah.
Or maybe a dramatization. You could do a little like anthology book of story, little collection of stories.
Well, I'll say the coolest thing that happened to us that I can say that this was really awesome when we first did our very first tour, and we used to do like the long weekends all the time and push out as far as we could push from Michigan and try to get back in time on a Sunday so that we could go back to work on a Monday. And we were like, all right, we're going to actually plan an actual tour. So we planned a 2-week tour to go down south. We had some contacts down there that were going to put us in Oklahoma and in Texas. But we go down there, and the last show of Texas that we had, the promoter that had us in that bar knew Vinnie Paul. If anybody doesn't know who Vinnie Paul is, he was the former drummer of Pantera. At that time, he was drumming for Hell Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was like, hey, if you guys want, Vinny is having a Halloween party at his club. And he and his brother Dime had a strip club called the Clubhouse in Dallas, Texas. He's like, you guys are invited. He's like, I'm on the list. And he's like, I'll get you in. So we went in, hung out, got to meet Vinny, got to meet the rest of Hell Yeah. They were really, really, really cool. And they invited us to come to Vinny's house the next day. So we went to Vinnie Paul's house up in Fort Worth and partied with him, which was super cool. I mean, that dude had an amazing house, dude. It was a rich part of the neighborhood. on top of the hill, like, gated community, like all this kind of stuff, security all around. But what was cool is they were recording their Band of Brothers album at the time. So everybody was in town. They were recording at Vinny's house. Vinny's drums were set up in the living room. So we got to see like the whole setup, and they let us listen to the album before it had been released. It was just like mixed, or it might not even been mixed. No, it was mixed. It wasn't mastered though. So they let us listen to it. Just it was one of those crazy nights. You just couldn't believe what was happening. I don't know how many people are metal fans here, but Pantera was a huge influence on our band, and Vinnie Paul was one of those guys that was just like on a pedestal. So when
Yeah,
you got to meet him, it was like meeting the fucking Pope or something. It was insane.
I heard he could party too, so I'm sure it was like the thing.
Dude, those parties were crazy because it was packed. He had like tons of people there, and it was a Halloween party on top of that.
Oh,
It was Monday Night Football. Like, he's a big Dallas fan, and Dallas was playing Philadelphia, so he was having this party at his house for Monday Night Football, and everybody was dressed up, and he's a really good cook too. Like, he had grilled some wings, he had his own barbecue sauce that he made that was fucking fantastic. Um, yeah, it
so
was an
it's
interesting
just
time,
cool
man.
upon cool. You're like, oh, look at the super badass neighborhood and the super
Dude,
badass house, and he makes his own barbecue sauce.
I was told this to a couple of people. Like, when you walked into his house, it was like these giant vaulted ceilings, and it was like 2 stories up and then a vaulted ceiling. And on his walls, he had like 10 or 15 widescreen TVs just on the walls going all the way up on this vaulted ceiling. And it
Wow.
was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, like way overkill. Like, you didn't need it, but it just
Yeah.
looked awesome. It looked up, and everywhere you saw there was a freaking TV, of the Monday Night Football game going on. And I was just like, my God, like I'm in Vinnie Paul's house. Like, this is insane. Like, I couldn't fathom it at the time. It seemed like a dream. Yeah, like the whole thing seemed like a dream. Even on the way home, a 16-hour drive home, that's all we did was talk about, like, can you believe what happened last night? Like, this was just fucking insane. Uh, then we got to hang out with Chad Gray, who woke up. He was a former singer in Mudvayne, and he was singing for Hell Yeah at the time. Really, really cool dude. And he had to stick around. We partied with him till like 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we ended up taking off. But yeah, that was a very surreal night. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever happened in my life. On a cool factor.
Mm. Yeah, I've definitely I've gotten to meet a couple of people here and there, but I have not gotten to go to like the party in the hills, like kind of jump into a mini po. Oh man, I mean that'd be pretty epic. I think the only thing that'd be more epic is I know that Vinny owned like a couple of clubs down there.
Yeah, like I said, we went to the popular one, which was the clubhouse, and hung out there. Chilled with a lot of the strippers. I mean, it's a strip club, is what you do. Uh, got our music played. The girls would strip to our music, so that was kind of a cool like ego thing. You're like, yeah, fucking chicks getting
Okay.
naked to our music and everything. But
Mm.
yeah, it was touring was something else, man. As far as not being like a signed band and you're doing it yourself, touring was a really cool thing because you just jumped into it. You lived the rock star life as long as you were out there. Party, drink, you smoking, just everything you do is just 100 miles an hour. And just pedal to the metal kind of lifestyle. But it was good. I wouldn't give it back for anything. I really wouldn't. It was a good 10 years worth of my life. That was a lot of memories and a lot of good people, a lot of
A
good
lot of
people in it.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It seems too. People are living life expectancies are getting longer and longer and stuff, and it's just it's cool to like take a little section of your life out and try to do something and because at the end of your life, I'd like to have a life like a big fish kind of thing, where there's a bunch
Yeah.
of interesting people showing up at the funeral because of all the different spots I kind of travel through. And so you did music, and then you retired from music, started doing the regular thing, and you got some time you decided to get back into comic books.
Yeah, when there was a few different things that led to the end of the band, uh, members leaving, just some chaos going on, and it just seemed like you could just see like it coming to an end. And I just decided to take a break from music. and back off for a little while, thinking that we'll get back together at some point, and then we'll just pick up where we're going. Because I'll tell you what, for a few years span, we were doing nothing but just skyrocketing, upwards. Getting more and more fans. The tours were getting bigger, the shows were getting bigger, notoriety was coming, and I just thought it was a really weird time that the band would stop, making music, and it was what was in the cards. So I knew that I was going to be getting married, and I knew that I wanted to start a family. And the more I kind of contemplated what I wanted to do in my life, I didn't think that being on the road a lot was good for raising a child, So I was like, if I'm going to do this, then I need to do something else for my life. As much as I liked music and the party lifestyle, it just wasn't what I could do with a family.
Yeah.
So I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to go back to drawing at some point. At the time, I thought it would be like way in the future, after I spent, 20 years doing music or something.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about that, and I started drawing again. Uh, I'd always done all the art for the band, all the designs, the CD designs,
All the
the
t-shirts and
t-shirt
stuff.
designs, all the stuff was me. So I still kept, artistically that way. And so I picked up a pencil again and started drawing. And I kind of rekindled my love for comics, which was, you know, drawing comics was my first love. Music was a close second, but art was always my first. And during that time, I kind of started reaching out to people that I had known back when I was originally trying to break into the industry in my early 20s. And Sean was one of those guys. And I remember I messaged Sean one day on Facebook and just, reconnected with him a little bit, caught up with what he had been doing for the last 10 years. And we talked briefly over that period of time, but not that much because I was just so invested into music. And he was really excited to have me back drawing. And, I was starting to show him some of the stuff that I was doing, and he was really liking it, very encouraging. He's like, yeah, do it, man. He's like, this is a great time right now to really jump back into it. He was telling me a little bit about the indie scene. Comicsgate was hadn't started yet when I started drawing. It would start like the year after that. So I just got back into it, and started catching up what I'd missed for 10 years, diving into YouTube. I found all these, art videos, my favorite artists drawing, and I just kind of brought myself up to speed as fast as I could. And Sean pushed me in the direction to do my own book because originally I wanted to, get a portfolio together and submit it to like, Marvel, DC, Image,
Hmm.
whatever, see if I could get a job. And he was like, "Fuck that shit, dude." He's like, "Do your own thing." And eventually, I listened to him.
Eventually, you listen
Eventually I
to.
listened to him. It took
I
a
mean,
second.
okay. When he said "do your own thing," like, what were you? You said this is like prior to you find Comicsgate. So, what were you looking at, like, as far as like doing? What did that look like, doing your own thing?
Well, so with Reaper Destroyer, I tried getting that book off of the ground in 2006, 2007. So before I went into music, coming out of my teens, I tried to break into the industry the normal way, which is go to conventions, show your art, or submit it to companies, and I would get rejection letters from Marvel and DC, and I'd meet editors at conventions that would just completely tear you down. But I met a lot of artists that would lift you up. So I was like, all right, I'm going to put out my own book. I'm going to put it out. We're going to put it out on the scene. And I'm going to see if I can get picked up by like Image or Arcana or something. And so I worked on Reaper Destroyer in 2006. And that's when I met Sean, because Sean was the brother-in-law of my inker. So I went to a New York convention where they were at, and met Sean. We hit it off. We had a lot of similar, basically the same age, a lot of the same likes. Uh, and that just so happened. I mean, he was a big supporter back then. It just so happened I went into music because there were some circumstances in life that just personal shit that pushed me in a different direction. So ended up going into music. But when I came back, he was just like, "Hey man, remember Reaper Destroyer?" He was like, "Dude, that was really awesome." He's like, "You should try to get that character going again." And at the time, I was just like, "Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I really like the character, but it's just I don't know. Like I want to get in the industry. I want to do this. I want to blah blah blah." And he was on me for a little while about doing it, and eventually he wore me down. And I was like, all right,
Okay,
I'm gonna start.
but what were
Let's,
you trying to get on? I mean, what was something you were willing to show off this personal IP idea that you had for something, like, what were you gunning for? Like, what was it that you like remembered or you were hooked on from a kid? Like, what books were you
oh
trying to get
well,
to?
yeah. Okay, so growing up in the '90s, was one of the booms of comics. Very uh, the artists that were there were blowing up. The characters were awesome. There was innovation in storytelling. Just the way they would produce comics, like it was very exciting. And that was still in an era where you could take your samples to a convention, show them to somebody, and they could say, "Hey, come work for me. I'll develop you. We'll bring you along, and you get into the industry." So coming back to comics, where I was just out of it for 10 years, I didn't pay attention to it at all. Maybe every once in a while I'd get a hair up my ass and I'd go to the store and I'd just look at the shelves and I just, never really saw anything that appealed to me and I'd just leave. So I thought coming back to the industry, it would be the same as it was in the 90s. I had no idea how much the industry changed in 10 years when I was
Yeah.
gone. So in my mind, I'm like, get your portfolio together and submit it. Let's start going to conventions. Let's get tables there. Let's sell prints. Let's, get yourself become a commodity so that somebody could pick you up and give you a job. And Sean was like kind of the first person who was trying to get me to see that things had changed dramatically since I had been gone.
Mm.
Even in the early 2000s, when I was trying to break into the early 2000s, it was still pretty good to get hired that way. People were still getting hired that way. But he's like, dude, it's not the same anymore. And, he kind of got me to realize that my dream, and that's the thing, like when you have a dream or you have something that you want to hold on to, you don't want to
You're
think
focused
it's
on.
not the same anymore,
Yeah.
you know? So he had to shatter that for me, which it hurt and it sucked, but I'm glad he did, because I don't want to, I would not have wanted to spend more time trying to get into an industry that didn't want anything to do with me.
Oh, I
So
mean, yeah. I mean, you said like you like that '90s style, and I think that you kind of reflect some of those artists from the '90s in your own work. That's not the thing they want to see anymore. Not in 2020. That's too good of artwork. There, it's too.
yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah.
You can't be
Uh,
doing that much artwork around here anymore in modern comics. They don't like
Yeah,
that.
that's 100% true. Which was always weird to me, because I always thought that was comics. I seen the stuff in the 90s, and that came off of the stuff from the 80s and 70s, and all it did was evolve
Yeah.
um, into what it became in the 90s, and then all of a sudden it became like this taboo thing. Like 90s art was all of a sudden like this, do not do. We should, shame it or whatever. Like let's pretend it didn't happen. Or let's make fun of it because of how extreme it was in the 90s, and now all of a sudden this
Oh, I
alternate
love
realism
everything was
thing is
extreme
going on.
about the night. Remember, like that was like the thing. Everything was extreme. Extreme
Yeah.
Mountain Dew, extreme Dorito,
Well, I'm saying it's
extreme.
the 90s in general, right? The 90s in general were great, not only in comics, in music, in movies, in every form of entertainment. The 90s was a very experimental decade. It really was. Like, look at the movies that were coming out. People were just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it stuck. But they were really good movies, and you had not, just cool new concepts coming out. People were pushing boundaries in technology, special effects. There was a big boom in the 90s all around music, everything. And comics was the exact same. Comics exploded in the 90s, with superstar artists like, Liefeld and Lee and Silvestri and McFarlane and Image Comics, and like these new characters were popping up. And I just thought that was the way it was going to be. When I came back, I figured like, yeah, sure, I'm just going to be the same way. I had no idea that that there was such a backlash to that, and that there was a writer takeover, and they would really hold down artists for I mean they're pretty much still holding down artists in the industry.
Well, like '90s was like a time. What I like about that time frame is there was just so much ability and like freedom. Like there's so much that exists, and I feel like a lot of things don't exist anymore. Everything became this real like sucked in bubble, or everything had to became oh you must do something like this. And then when you started taking away all the freedom of the artwork, then we started losing huge different chunks.
Yeah, everything became
And we have a
formulaic.
I
You
think we have a
know.
decline too, like a decline in artwork. I think that things
Oh yeah.
inspired other things.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why now the industry is the way it is. When it started going bad, I think it was the revolt of the writers. Nobody wanted to see another Image happen where you have like the top artists deciding to leave altogether and form something, and take a chunk of the buyers with them. Uh, but yeah, there was a backlash to that. You know, editors got a lot more control, writers got more control, and they started wanting different styles of art. You know, you can even talk to Dan Frege talking about like when Extreme Studios ended and he started trying to get work at Marvel or whatever. You know, people would be like, "Oh, you're that extreme guy. You've got that extreme studio style art." You know, like it was really talked about like in this bad light. You know,
You're like, what? You're like,
yeah, and it's
that was
just
a
like
good thing. I worked
it
really
was,
hard to
yeah.
learn how to do this.
And I think that was the start of the industry going down because you took the quality of art away because the writers wanted such control, and they didn't want, you know, big muscles and friggin' pouches and stuff like that anymore. They wanted more realistic stuff, realistic clothing. The problem with comics is nobody wants to see that in comics for the most part. You want it, you tune into a comic, you read a comic because it's a fantasy based medium. You know, if I want to see realistic looking superheroes, I'll go look at a cosplayer or something like that. You know, but if you want to see uh, fantasy, dynamic, energy filled drawing, you know, I'll go look at something like from the 90s because that's stuff that you don't see. So you can get lost in the fantasy aspect of the art. You know, nowadays, art is boring. I was talking to a pretty famous colorist the other day
Yeah.
from the 90s, and we were just kind of talking. And I told him, I was like, dude, I was like, I don't know what you think nowadays. I was like, but I hate a lot of colors in mainstream comics nowadays. I was like, it's not the same as like when when you were tearing it up. And he was like, yeah, I've got a lot of opinions about that. He's like, one day I'll share them with you. He's like, but they're not positive. I was like, I can tell, you know, because a lot of you get a lot more flat colors out of you know, comics. A lot of artists, you know, a lot they were doing more line work, so the colors can be as dynamic. So things became more of a flat medium instead of that nice, you know, 3D aspect. There's a technique to drawing that makes a 2D image look 3D, and that technique went away, and it's gone away for for the majority of mainstream books, and I think they look like shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. I think I think a lot of them do. I think that there's like a bunch of excuse work and stuff. This whole thing of like we allow we need this diversity or we need to like look at things in a different concept. Like, no, you're just being lazy at a certain point. I think you're
Yeah,
just you're really what you're doing is you're just simplifying things and you're coming at them in a way that like it's just destructive. It's not creative and it's not influential. You know what? Like, I don't know why people can't just let the market decide things anymore. Just like, if this is what everybody's buying, that's what they're buying. Like, that's the popular artwork. Like, let the thing, let whatever the best thing win. And when that happens, it creates room for more things to be created. When you're like, oh, we have to have exactly these things, and all this other stuff that you never thought about never happens, never gets discovered.
yeah, and that's to me that's what was special about the 90s because there was a freedom to have that creative gene and just try things. When things became more formula based, when they're like, you know, we need to make sure these things are successful. So this is successful over here. We're going to bring it over here. And then we're just going to regurgitate the same thing over and over again. We're going to reboot after, you know, title after title. We're going to give new number ones. And they just would give you the same shit over and over again, just repackaged in a different way.
Or we're gonna give you the same kind of story thing. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
you liked how everybody died? Cool. We're gonna kill everybody again.
Right,
Let's just keep
exactly.
going.
Like, oh yeah, yeah, we'll just kill everybody again. We'll do the same stuff. You know, like that. They do the same things in movies too. You know, like remakes, remakes. That's all we do nowadays because there's no new ideas in Hollywood, or if there are, nobody wants to take a chance on them because they want to go with a quote unquote sure thing that's going to bring them money. So the
Oh,
creativity is out the window now. It's
yeah.
entertainment in general. You know, it's
Well,
like
it's like, how many people would go to see a Goonies movie right now? They're like the original cast. The Goonies have been trying to make a Goonies 2 forever, and nobody's like bought the script and made it happen. And I'm just like, it's just a slam dunk. Like,
oh
I don't
hell
know.
yeah,
Like,
I go see it. Yeah, I go see it with the original cast coming back. You know, you could do so much good stuff with that. You know, you could have the original cast coming back. You could have it be with their kids now, carrying the story on, but you still bring the original cast. So you still have the nostalgia aspect, and then you're handing it off to a new
yeah, you know
generation.
what?
You
Everybody
know,
keeps saying nostalgia like it's a bad thing. I'm like, fuck you
right?
all. Like, I like nostalgia. You know what? I like the thing that makes me feel comfortable. I'm tired of going to the theater and going,
Yeah,
maybe this is okay, or that was pretty decent, or that wasn't too bad, as opposed to going, damn, I really had an emotional oh, too bad it was nostalgic. can't enjoy it now because it was nostalgic. Like fuck all you
Yeah,
people.
somewhere along the line, someone decided that fan service and nostalgia, nostalgia,
Yeah.
was a bad thing, and I don't understand. It's like, do people not like money? It's like, no, they
Yeah.
want to give us what they want to give us, you know. And it's like, I hear the new Spider-Man um, is very fan service, you know.
Yeah, they're saying that thing might clear $1 billion.
Yeah,
Like,
it,
yeah,
because I feel like it's going to be something that they did for the fans. And now I see some critics talking about like the downfall of the movie is because there was so much fan service. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, fan service is what you should be giving to the people that are spending money on you. You know, give them what they want to see. Don't give them what you think that they want to see. But that's what our industry, entertainment in general, has become. And that's why I think that it's so crappy these days. I think fan service is great. Nostalgic, anything nostalgia is great because you can tap into a generation that fell in love with whatever it was in their day, and you can bring them back spending money because you're giving them fucking Luke Skywalker showing up, you know, in Mandalorian or something like that, you know, just whatever. You can do it. If you do it right, you'll make a lot of money. But the problem is you get a lot of people that want to shove their politics into it and do all their check boxing, and they're just going to give you regurgitated shit of something that doesn't even
or
resemble
just
the
just
original
something
product
of poor quality. Yeah, of just poor writing with no standards or like recognition of standards.
anymore. Yeah,
And
it's just
it's insane.
Masters of the Universe. You know, I watched both parts of that, and granted, the second part was significantly better than the first. The only thing that's good about that series is the animation. The
Yeah.
animation was top
The
notch.
animation is like
Fantastic.
magical. It's like everything you'd want if in a new yeah. It's like
Yeah,
because like
yeah,
I mean adults make toys. Like there's all those toy sites, right? You can go rebuy all of your Transformers, but now in a super much better version with like higher tech plastics. Because as adults, we still had the asphyxiation and made that product.
yeah. Yeah, it's just you know, I wonder too when it's going to change. Like, unfortunately, a lot of these places make way too much money that they can. We look at things as a bust, as a financial bust, but to them, it's just a drop in the bucket. So they'll just retool and do something new. Cowboy Bebop got canceled after 3 weeks on being on Netflix. You know, and like that was such a tragedy. Uh,
Mm.
Trash remake of the original anime that people absolutely loved. Again, you know, God forbid you give the fans what they want, you know,
Yeah,
because they might actually come out and support and
they
spend
might
money
like
on
it.
you.
They
You
they
know,
might
let's
spread it around. It might have a huge box off. It might like do well. I don't
yeah,
know.
you know,
I think it's insane. Like the Marvel universe, like we're in an age, right, where our technology has not been any greater. Where we can make Iron Man
facts.
now. We can make Iron like that was never like nobody made comic book movies because it was not possible to make Iron Man. Well, now we can.
Yeah.
So being that we can do that, it's absolutely asinine to me that they'd never just like. I feel like this is the biggest layup in the world. If I was an executive at like one of these companies, this is what I do. I would just go into the books. I would look at the financials of all the different series through like Marvel or DC, whichever one I was working for,
Right.
and I would take the biggest runs and whatever the biggest runs had. I would go through those and figure out which ones you can make movies out of, and
Yeah.
those
And
would be the movies I would make. I would make the movies like the storylines that everybody wants to see instead of watching Batman start over for the 100th time. Like, can we go? You
right.
know what I mean? Can we go back to a year one? Can we have an old Batman? Can we just have a middle story that just happens that has nothing to do with origin? Just
Yeah.
Batman's like doing something.
Yeah. I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, there's so many good stories in comics over the years, over decades, that you could just take any one of them and be as true as you can in a certain format, because nothing can be exact because
Yeah.
comics were in a world that's no budget. Movies have a budget, but you could be as close to exact as possible and give a way better story than a lot of the stuff they put out there now. And people would come out and see it. It would be a hit. And for
It's
some
the
reason they
same thing with
don't.
Star Wars. There's an entire like there's decades of novels that have this entire canon that existed that
Yeah,
everybody loved.
yeah,
Go, top selling now. Just go through the storylines. Give us new Jedi's. Like, can we go? There's like 30 other generations of them in these novels that carried on. That has all this stuff. And it's like you could make all that, but instead,
that in the video games. I mean, the video games were very popular. I know tons of people that wanted them to make movie versions of some of the video game storylines they came out with, you know. But again, somebody smart apparently decided to let's push all that to a side and let's do our own version, you know, and put out the Mary Sue character of Ray, you know, and be like, this is what people want. You know, they want a character that you can't relate to, that doesn't have any kind of struggles or character building throughout 3 movies. You know, like
Yeah.
this is it. This is what we're gonna stake the franchise to. And then they wonder why people, you know, have a backlash. A
Oh,
lot
are
of it
you?
is because people want to feel connected to a character, relate to characters. So you have to have characters struggle. You know,
Yeah,
Luke
you
was
have
such
to
a
have
great
something.
character because he was a starry-eyed idealist. You know, he wanted to do something. He wanted to join the rebellion. You know, he wanted to do something greater than himself, and he made mistakes. He made bad decisions that led to his friends getting hurt. You know, and he grew from that. You know, you tore him down. You did the whole hero's journey, which, you know, you go through this journey where the hero has to stumble and fall. He has to learn some kind of lesson. He has to be built back up so that he can rise up again and be the hero that you know he's going to be at the end of his story arc. Well, they decided to throw all that out with Ray. They're like, we're just going to bring her in. She's going to be the best at everything. She's going to know how to fly. She's going to know how to use the
She's
lightsaber.
just
She's
the
going to be able to
Matrix of
beat the
Jedi's.
big bad in the very first movie. You know, they build up Kylo Ren as this new Darth Vader.
Yeah, yeah,
And
like
in the
the
very
yeah,
first movie, she defeats him. You
yeah.
totally ruined his character. That's
How
it. He
yeah,
flipped
how
his
are you gonna
balls
do that
in
to
that movie.
Kylo Ren when he's supposed to be being trained by, like, the baddest, like, Sith Lord and that's existed, right? Like he
Yeah.
is, he's Vader 2.0, and then yeah, she just randomly goes, "I can just beat you."
Yeah.
It
And
just happens.
if anybody, you know, sat through all 3 of those movies, which I did, try to find me a single point in that trilogy where Ray struggles with anything or gets defeated and has to build herself back up. There's not a single time. Not a single. Everybody she meets, she defeats. Like, that's, you can't relate to that. You know, like, there's no character building there. You know, none of the characters that they had in that series or in that trilogy gave you any relatability or character building whatsoever. None of them. That's why the series was that sucked. Like, I don't feel attached to any of the characters. Even the OG characters they brought back, they ruined. You
they,
know,
they just yeah, they went out of their way just to hurt everything, didn't
yeah, they did. And it's that mentality. It's that mentality that's in everything right now. You know, it's I don't understand it. I still don't understand. And to me, the only thing can be is that they don't really care about the money aspect. It doesn't
they?
bother them. It's just
No, no, the
their
people don't
ideals,
care
their
about it. It's
agenda in
just like
there.
it's a weird cause, and that's where you can tell the passion dies off because it doesn't expand. It doesn't go anywhere. All these series are dying. All these movies are flop. Every time they try to inject something really ridiculous, what happens? Now they're going to make a Spider-Man movie that everybody's like, oh, all they're going to. Everyone's heard all the leaks. All the guys you want to see are coming back. All the versions of Spider-Man that you want to see are coming back. Like everything that you want in a Spider-Man movie that was good before is all coming back. Like
Hmm.
it's gonna destroy everything. It's gonna
Well,
it's gonna scorch earth because people are gonna see something that actually they want to see.
exactly. And that's the one hope I have. You know, a lot of the reports I've been reading is that this movie doesn't have woke shit in it. You know, they're not trying to push agendas. It is a fan service. It's somebody that wrote that movie and wanted to do it for the fans. They actually sat back for once and said, what could I do to make the fans go crazy? What can I do to actually give them a really good movie that's going to entertain them for 2.5 or whatever hours? And you know what? That movie's going to make $1 billion, where all the other shit that they've been shoving down our throats, whether it's TV series or movies over the last few years, fall on its ass because it's trash. People are tired of it. It's just, you know,
It's
nobody wants to go see a movie anymore because it's got a female lead or it's got,
oh
you
yeah.
know,
Oh no no, you know what? There was that's the thing when we talk about the '90s, right? Like Angelina Jolie, right? You'd want to go see her like in Tomb Raider. You would want to go see her in Mrs. and Mrs. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? Like there was something more believable about that female character. It wasn't like everything was outrageous and this is like how it is all the time. Like it
exactly.
actually made that character valuable.
Well, and I've had the argument before, like when they attack people and like you can't handle a female lead. My point is, it's like we don't go to a movie because it's a female lead. You go to a movie because the movie looks good, and when you go to a good well told movie, it doesn't matter if the lead character is female, male, or whatever. You can still relate to the character. So you go back to the 90s, even the late 80s, there are tons of female leads that males, whatever age they were, grew up absolutely loving. Ripley, you got a Sarah Connor. There was what was her name from Underworld? The Underworld series was awesome with that character. Um, I mean, there's just so many female led movies in the 90s that were great that they didn't have to prop them up and make them like the greatest thing ever. They treat them as
Yeah,
real
they just were good.
people,
It's like,
real characters that would have issues. They'd go through all the stuff you need to have them relate to the audience. And guess what? We would relate to them and we'd like the movie and we'd spend our money. That's what we would do.
I mean, I don't think Kate Beckinsale did too bad in Underworld, like in
I
any of
loved
them.
Underworld.
You
I
know,
loved it. Like maybe not all of them. 1 and 2 were really good. Let's say that 1 and 2 were really
one,
good. I like
two.
those. After that, it kind of fell off. But I loved her character, and I didn't care that she was this female lead that was kicking ass. She
Yeah.
was hot as fuck. It was a fun movie. It was well done in my opinion. There was some good, fun acting is for whatever that genre would be. It's not Shakespeare or anything, but it's
Yeah.
it's definitely something that would make you want to come back and watch it.
But she
And
also wasn't untouchable. It wasn't like completely like a complete suspension of disbelief in the whole thing. You know what I mean? She
right,
wasn't untouchable. She used a bunch of like skills and tactics to like take down werewolves and stuff. It wasn't like she was just hand to hand combat. Like I'm stronger. Like I'm the Hulk, the ultimate character. I can just rip werewolves in half.
right.
But everybody else is getting fucked up.
Yeah, that's just where they go wrong because they, for some odd reason, they think that people, if you're gonna have a female lead, that they can't do anything to diminish the fact that their character is female. Because let's say they struggle with something, or they actually get defeated at some point in the movie and have to learn how to deal with defeat so that they can, you know, win in the end. They can't do that because they're like, well, that would diminish the fact that it's a woman. We can't do that. So we got to take that out. Take it out. Let's, we'll write around it. We'll figure out something so that she doesn't have to go through those struggles. Take that with any kind of woke messaging in movies nowadays, or TV series, comics in general. It's like, again, you can't relate to these characters because of that reason. You know,
Yeah, no. No, they like to change things too. It's I don't know. I think it's also just lazy. Like, at what point do you like if everything's evil, right? If everything's completely bad, and why are you piggybacking off of it then? If this is the instrument of the bad thing that's ruining our society, then why are you using that instrument to make your characters? Why are you like trying to take this same tool and paint it a different color and call it, say that it's not the same damaging tool? Like,
right?
why wouldn't you just make new characters that are like we're? It's just so lazy to me. Like you're just it's an absence of ability to think of someone, think of someone different and be able to get into the different mindset, or maybe a different culture, maybe a different ethnicity, maybe a lot of different things, maybe a different sex, and like create a character. You know, there's from human observation that humans can relate to.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
It's
it's so amazing. Like I think that everything about our culture has been developed, through languages. It's all borrowing. Like movies,
oh yeah,
people don't realize that like Western movies, inspired some Japanese movies that inspired some Western movies. Like there's back and forth play that caused all these weird genres where it's like, well, we were stealing a little bit from them, and then they started stealing a little bit from us when we did it a little bit different.
yeah.
It's just evolution of into a greater art, like a cooler product.
Mm. Well, that's one thing. We'll circle back a little bit to Comicsgate for a second. That's the one thing I like about CG is you got a lot of the people that want to just produce the best content that they can produce, and good stories, good characters, or whatever. They're not worried about the box checking or trying to make sure that this person looks undefeated. Like you're gonna have a lot of good stories, and I think that's where the industry is coming. As small as Comicsgate is comparative to a lot of things, I think that is really where a lot of people are finding the freedom to do the almost like the creative aspect of what the 90s were. You can come here and you can throw something against the wall, see if it sticks, see if it connects with the audience. You have opportunities to do that here without having somebody to say like, oh, you don't have enough of this in your book, or you need more of this, or you have to have balanced out this character with that character, so you can actually tell a story. It's like, well, let's tell a good story and let's fit people into that good story first.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's just, I mean, like you said, there's like a diversity, like in Comics Back Gate. If you want to take it back around, we have your project, Reaper Destroyer, right? Which we've talked a little bit about, but we haven't really gotten into what Reaper Destroyer is.
Well, Reaper Destroyer is kind of a, I hesitate to say this. It's a throwback to the '90s in an aspect of it's all my influences growing up, the things that I wanted to see in comics or I wanted to see in movies naturally came out when I was developing the story. So as far as that goes, it's got a '90s flavor to it, but it's not something where I'm trying to do like a remake of a '90s book, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's still new, it's still fresh for modern day. But the book is about Matthew Walker, who is trapped inside this supernatural suit of armor that acts kind of like a prison. He doesn't know how he got there, and he's actually got short-term and long-term memory loss that really fucks
Oh,
with him as he's trying to live his daily life. What makes it worse is that he is trapped inside this prison with the ancient spirit of death, known as the Reaper Destroyer. He's got an actual name, which if you got the ash can, you'll find out what
we'll
his name
find out
is
here soon
in the
enough.
ash can. So
Oh,
I'll tease that out there. I got a lot of information in the ash can too, so I don't want to say too much for the people that bought the ash can. But one of the things about the ash can was that I've got an in-depth look at the history of the Reaper Destroyer, the storyline, characters, some of the main characters you're going to see, and how they all fit in this world. Um, but there's a struggle between Matt and this entity, this Reaper Destroyer entity, for his soul, for one, for possession of his body, and he's constantly being attacked by these outside sources that are trying to capture him for whatever reason. He doesn't quite know what it is. Um, this book is going to appeal to anybody that likes Spawn, Batman, The Darkness.
I was gonna say it seems like a memento kind of feel like oh you don't know what's going on. You have to relearn, or you have like a partial memory of what's going on with your life. That's
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of influence. There's some like Jason Bourne style, kind of storytelling in it where I always like that form of you're gonna learn as the main character learns. You're gonna see things that get revealed. I didn't want to drop a book right off the bat and do an origin story. I always hated origin stories. I think they're slow to get into. So I wanted to start the character already in his world, and then we'll learn how he learns. One of the factors that he deals with is PTSD from this
okay.
traumatic experience that trapped him in this prison. We don't know exactly what that experience is, but it's something that causes him to have blackouts, and they could last, a couple hours to, a few weeks. But the problem is when he blacks out, the spirit is in control. So whatever happens during that time, he doesn't quite know, but he always ends up in one spot, which is sitting on this gargoyle, looking at this building that is the Range Corporation. Victor Range is one of the big bads of the book. He's kind of like a Kingpin meets like a Hannibal Lecter without the cannibalism
Okay.
aspect, but a very very smart dude. He's part of an immortal race called the Elder Sons, who were the original inhabitants of the Earth before the race of Adam was created. Uh, so again, going back to some of my influences of the '90s, I was big into Highlander. I love the whole immortal storylines of immortals fighting
I love
throughout.
that too. Oh
Yeah.
man, the
So I
Highlander
was like, I
movies are
got to have
great.
something like that. So I wrote a race into the book that could span generations and centuries going back. So the history of my book will go from modern day to the beginning of time. And it allows me a lot of room to tell a lot of stories if I want. I have a lot of room to do a lot of flashbacks with some of these characters that have been alive since the beginning. Like Victor. Victor's one of the oldest people alive in the world. Um, a small aside, we were talking about Underworld. The reason why I call my main character Victor is I was really big into that movie when it came
Yeah.
out, and the bad guy in that movie was called Victor. And I was like, that's just, it's one of the
It is.
perfect names for a bad guy. So I was like, I stole that right off the bat. It's like, I'm gonna make,
There we go. There we
but
go.
yeah, it's I mean, this movie's got this book's got elements of all those titles I mentioned. You know, Highlander, the Guyver. You know, if you like ninjas, if you like fallen angels, if you like vampires, if you like monsters, you know, immortals, you're gonna have it all in this book, or at least in the series of books. It's a 6 part series, but it's there's gonna be a lot of fun stuff in there, a
So
lot of
this is the
big
thing. So there's
events.
a person. There's a person. We don't know if there's a full person or corporeal being, but they're trapped in a suit of armor with a with an entity, right?
Yeah,
That
a
the life
spirit, a
take
demon, you know,
yeah a
whatever
life
it ends
taking
up being.
entity, not necessarily a demon, I guess, but like a function of the universe.
Yeah, it's the ancient spirit of death, and the way I've described I almost said his name or its name. The way I describe this character, it's neither evil nor good. It's just it does a job.
Just
You
neutral.
know, it's created to do a job, and usually that job is to kill. And it's just it doesn't have any kind of moral sense. But what it does is it takes over a host and it takes them over completely, and then through that host, it does its job. It fulfills its power and it goes and takes out the portion of humanity
Are you
that
is the person when it's host? Okay, so when it's hosting something, it's taking over and it's doing its duties. Is it in control or is it like a symbiote? Or can we release in this information? I don't want to ask too many questions, but
yeah. Let's see. So without revealing too much, if so in the history of this mythology, there has been other Reaper Destroyers. This
yeah.
entity, it's got an actual name. I'll just call it. The book's called Reaper Destroyer. The entity is known as Reaper Destroyer, but it's actually got a name that we call it in the book. Um, it's been in other hosts, and a lot of times when it takes over a host, it's summoned by a certain person or thing, and then that's used as a weapon for whatever that task is. So at this point, they're both trapped inside this supernatural, you know, suit of armor that's keeping them from that's keeping it from possessing Matt, which would be its main goal to fulfill its entire power. So it's
Oh,
depowered, so to speak. So we don't get to see the the power of the entity, the spirit, the demons, and it doesn't know why it's trapped there either. So
oh
you know
wow. Oh,
it's got a little bit more information than Matt does, but there's a mystery here that we're gonna unravel as we go. You know, like I want I want to keep people guessing as much as I can. You know,
nice. Okay.
what are they here for? You know, what are they being used? You know, why does this person want to capture the power? Why does this person want to capture the power? There's a civil war going on between the immortals that are left on Earth right now. The Elder Sons in this world are the ones that are like the Illuminati or the shadow people, you know, that work behind the scenes and control the course of the world. You know, they're the ones that, you know, I'm big into conspiracies too. So I poured a lot of my conspiracy, you know, stuff into this book as well. So like, you know, anybody that controls any government and the real powers of the world are these immortals that have posed as kings and queens and gods throughout the centuries, you know, and just found a way to have control over the world. And there's a civil war going on between those two. The two ones that are left there, everybody's wanting to possess this new power that has arrived. And so Matt and the spirit are fighting against each other for control, and they're also fighting against the outside world that wants to use them for their
Oh,
own will as well.
oh man. Oh, this sounds like a movie. This is good. I like it. Yeah. How far out? How you've been cooking this story for a long time, right? Like,
Yeah,
like how much of a story do you have in your head?
I've got years of story in my head, years of
Yeah.
story. If if I was able to do this book as long as I want to do it, yeah, it's there's so much stuff I want to do with the book down the line. So I've got concept wise, uh, you know, 50 issues of story arc planned for this book. So I mean, because it's like
Mm.
I tried to shape the world as best I could to give me a lot of freedom to do whatever I wanted within the world. And I've got a lot of other characters too. Like besides everything I've told you about, there is another character which I revealed a drawing of the other day on Twitter. Her name is Vanessa. She's actually the big bad of the series, and I'll introduce you guys to her in issue 1, and you'll see why she is actually the real evil that everybody has to worry about. So there's different layers of
Ooh.
threats, you know.
No, I feel it. I feel it. Okay, so you said you came from like different influences, but like more specifically, maybe for like the people who more comic book savvy, what were the artists and like like kind of things that like who did you kind of steal some stuff to develop your style into?
Oh yeah, man, a lot.
Yeah,
Hey, I'll take this back to I'll take it back to my music influence for a little bit there. So Phil Anselmo was a singer for Pantera, Down, Superjoint Ritual, a bunch of different bands. Very famous metal singer in the 90s. And I used to look up to him quite a bit. I used to take a little bit of my style of singing in metal from his as well. But one of the things that he said in an interview I read that really resonated with me, he was talking about specifically about singers, but he was talking about developing your own style. And he said the mistake that a lot of people make is that they try to emulate one or two singers, and then you kind of come off as like almost a rip off of those person.
yeah.
He's like, it's not bad that you rip off somebody else's style. He's like, well, what you want to do is find not two people, but like 23 people and rip them the fuck off and
All
add
of it. You
all
want to
that stuff
combine all
in.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and take all that stuff that you can take, bits and pieces from here to here, and put it together, and that will become a style. And you'll have like a familiar aspect that people will be able to kind of like, oh, this person sounds like him, or he sounds like this, and this, and this, but it's still uniquely you
You.
style, you know. And
Yeah.
so I tried to do that in music, and I try to do it in art too. Like coming up, like I was always big fans of Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane in the '90s, Stephen Platt. Like all the big '90s artists.
Yeah.
They, at one point or another, Dale Keown, they all had an influence. When I came back to drawing again in 2016 is when I started drawing again. Um, I started looking at a bunch of different artists, at like a ton of different artists that I loved, and I was like, I like how this person draws faces. I like how this person renders and crosshatches. I like how this person draws dynamically. I like how this person does like page layouts. So I tried to take that philosophy and put it into art, and take as much as I could from all my favorite artists and pour it into my style. So if you see my style, you could say like, hey, he looks like this guy, or looks like this guy, but it's going to still be a uniquely me style. So I try to give you something that's familiar but new, and that's always been my goal: familiar but new.
There you go. The sequential. So, I mean, like you said, you jumped into comics. You had early on like an idea you want to do comics. Um, how much on the sequential game have you learned? Do you think like now versus like because I feel like with love of the game time and maybe coming back and also then just being like re-immersed into a fresh community that's more popular, like that has more
Mm.
material to read like in the 90s, probably picked up like a little bit more, like you might have refined some things.
Yeah, the sequential thing was the biggest thing. Back in the day, I spent a lot of time drawing a lot of pinups, and which is something that a lot of young artists do because that's the fun thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technique and study into sequential storytelling. Like when you actually break it down, it's not just take a page and have panels and that's it. There's a way to set panels up. There's a way to move the reader's eye through the page the correct way so that even if there wasn't any script on the page, you could still clearly and accurately read by the images, and tell what's going on. And once you get that down, then you can expand and do, the more dynamic, crazy page layouts, but you know how to properly put them together so you're not confusing the reader. So there was a lot of artists I would study, and specifically storytelling wise. Greg Capullo is great at storytelling, specifically more how he places the camera.
Hmm.
And if you don't know too much about, or if anybody out there is listening, you don't know a lot about the terminology of sequential storytelling. It's like you're the director of a movie, so you get to plan where you're moving that camera in a scene, and what's the most dynamic way to bring a scene in, and how do you frame it. you know. So you want a bird's eye view, you want a worm's eye view, you want to have some kind of distorted view. You do want to bring the scene from left to right to left, whatever. You can really move the camera around and put them in some dynamic places. Greg Capullo was great at that. Look at his work in Court of Owls in the Batman relaunch in the 52. He did some very, very dynamic places where you would put the camera where you wouldn't think. If you look at a scene, you'd be like, that's a really interesting place to focus. But he would do it and it would work. And it was just one of those things that added something to it. Brett Booth is another one with panel layouts that's very dynamic. He's one of those guys that if you have a boring scene of two characters drawing, he wants to make it as interesting as he can, and he's going to do it with the way that he lays out panels. So it's not just a grid panel of two guys having a conversation or whatever. So I try to pay attention to that. Like some of the great Silvestri, Portacio, there are these things called anchor panels, which is if you would have one big panel on the page, and it's usually not a full page, but it's called the anchor panel. It's what's the most important to that page. And then around that you have what you would call floating panels, and you could strategically float these panels around that scene, and you could form it dynamically. So the main thing you want to get across in that page is the anchor panel, and then everything else brings it all together and how you're telling the story. It's all really cool when you break it down. I'm sure it's boring to people who aren't artists, but as an artist, it's really cool when you break down sequential storytelling. There's a lot to it, and that's why
Well, I
you
feel
see
like it's the
some
biggest
people
challenge.
succeed and others
It's like
not.
one thing to be able to draw. It's another thing to be able to draw fast and be able to draw like dynamically. It's a completely different thing to be able to tell a story with all that. It's like
Absolutely.
it's another skill set like added into the whole mix.
Well, that's why you see some people never really graduate beyond doing like pinups, because you want to draw the fun stuff. You want to draw the action scene, the big shots. You got to have a love for storytelling to do sequential pages, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that you're not going to really want to draw that has to be told.
Well,
And
like just like I don't know, little things like buildings, bridges, right? Like if your
well, yeah,
character's on
that too.
top of a perch, like in the middle
Yep.
of building, like
Well,
now you have 15 other buildings in the background.
yeah, you have to learn how to draw everything. Depending on what the scene calls for. You're in a city, obviously you got to learn how to lay out a city. It doesn't have to be like a perfect rendition of New York or anything, but you have to have something that resembles New York, so that when the readers read in the book, their focus is on the character and the script. But when they're just glazing over the background, everything looks correct. You could stylize it any way you want. You could make New York City look like Gotham City if you wanted to, as long as every once in a while you threw in the Statue of Liberty and Times Square or something like that. But you could draw buildings any way you make them look, and that kind of just adds into your style. But you got to do it scenery wise. Drawing a forest, drawing a subdivision. There's so many things you have to learn how to draw. And sometimes you don't even learn how to draw them until you get to a scene and you're like, "Fuck, I gotta draw this." Like shit, get some references going here.
Well, that's the thing. It's a unlimited budget, but it is definitely limited on how much you want to do,
Yeah, yeah,
how much
yeah.
background you want to put into. We can open up on a big, wide open field on a battlefield and have all these things, but that's a lot of shit to do.
It is. It is. Absolutely is. That's what's awesome about comics. And at the same time, as an artist, I'm writing my own stuff, so I can control what I do. But if I was just hired to do a book and the writer was like, "Hey, I need like you said, I need a battle scene and I need 100 people," you got to find a way to draw 100 people, and make it seem interesting, and then also make it not take like a fucking month to draw one page because you're trying to
All the little,
hide all these characters in there.
I think it's amazing too. I think that I think that those kind of thoughts, like that economy of thought, and like the fact that they didn't, now there's a lot of stuff that's drawn, I guess, through like cheater programs, right? Like I can take a city
Yeah.
skyline, right, and I can put it in Photoshop, and I can draw over the whole fucking thing, and then I can
Yep.
have like a cheater skyline or whatever. It's I think that when you had to draw the stuff yourself, that's what created all those techniques, all those shorthands, like all those like styles and ways to present and perspectives that you would have never been created before.
Yeah, that's and I'm a traditional artist, so I don't do a lot of digital stuff. I have drawn digital before, but you're right. There are so many techniques now in whatever you draw in Photoshop, you draw in a Clip Studio, where you can grid things out, you can get perfect lines. Like you said, you can import references and draw right over those references if you want. Uh, but I think that there's a certain energy that gets lost, in my opinion, when you do those kind of things. Like there's an energy to putting pencil to paper and in the movement of all that stuff. It's when you get digital, you can almost get a little bit too refined because you can go in, you can zoom in, and you can do any tiny little detail. You can
Wouldn't that
fix
be the
every
argument
little
with
thing.
music? That's kind of like the thing that like
True,
why a lot of
true.
people really like really old vinyls or older like recordings because there was just four tracks and it was one go and sometimes you fucked up and it was in there. It was just in there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess yeah, in any kind of field, the way that technology goes, is ultimately going to find a way that makes it easier, but also you can nitpick at it so much that you might take a little bit of the life out of it. And you don't want to do that. You want to keep energy to your work no matter what it is. So if you are drawing something on a page, if it doesn't look 100% correct, that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you've accomplished the energy and you've put together something dynamic and cool, I think that's way better than putting that in a digital aspect and then going through and you know adjusting an arm, shrinking this, shrinking that, moving something slightly, and doing like all these tiny little adjustments to make something look completely accurate. When you step back, you're like, hey, it looks really good, but did the energy survive? And a lot of times, no. It becomes a very good static picture where that
Mm.
energy, that excitement has disappeared, in my opinion. But um, yeah, I mean, traditional is the way to go. I know it's kind of a dying form. I know I see a lot of people doing digital art these days.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's an economy. I think it's the easiness. I think especially when you're working with multiple artists over, different platforms, it's the easiest way would be to do it digital because I can drop it in a Dropbox. You can pick it up. You can do whatever. You can send it back to me. I can touch up.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's Sean's a digital artist, and he does really good work, and we bust each other's balls all the time. But there's definitely some advantages to doing digital. And the times I have drawn digital, it's nice to be able to just hit the back button and erase instead of having to spend the time to erase. So there's definitely advantages, but I will always, hey, what's going on, Oliver? I will always be a traditional artist. I like the feel of the
Mm.
paper. I just like the feel of everything when it's digital
Well,
or when it's traditional.
here's a little teaser trailer for this project. I think we
Oh
should check it
yeah.
out. Well, there we go.
I need to update that.
Pretty rad, sir.
Lose my voice.
Coming soon. Um, no, I'm excited about the fact that you released the ash can. Like everybody missed out if they didn't get a hold of one. But I think a lot of people got a hold of one, which is going to be really dope because I think that's really going to create the hype. That book comes out, everybody gets in their hand, they get to see it, and then everybody gets to talk about it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Joe, you're not going to disappoint me. So if everything looks as good as it does in that trailer, I think we're gonna like there's gonna be a lot of excitement behind it.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and I'm really excited to get it out to everybody that backed, and I was blown away that I reserved 170 copies to people. That was really cool to see. I did not expect that at all, and it's cool. I've been tracking the shipment. The books are still in Arizona, so I'm hoping to get them here by Saturday, and then I can start doing some. I got to do the signings and
Yeah.
get them, do all the fulfillment stuff, which will be the first time I've done that. So that'll be fun. That'll be a learning experience, but it'll be interesting to see this get out and to start getting
Joe's
some
there with
feedback.
the Sharpie and envelope.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna sit down. I got most of them wanted the book signed, so there's gonna be at least 160 that I got to sign,
Mm.
which I know that there might not be that much to some of the guys that push a lot of big numbers, but it's gonna be, like I said, it's gonna be a fun new experience because I've never done this before. So the fulfillment thing, packing them up, getting everything out to people, a nice finality to it, and I'm eager to get some feedback from everyone once they start getting it.
Oh yes, sir. I think you've been an amazing guest tonight. You can check out Joe on his channel, Joe M Sonntag, just like his name that's right here on the screen. It's also Joe M Sonntag one on Twitter. You also get him on Ott and Stuff, which is the other channel that you also see things with his partner Sean. And
Yeah.
all these links are in the description: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Ott and Stuff, YouTube, Facebook, and the trailer. All these links are available below. Thank you, sir, for being a guest tonight. I appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for having me, man. This is really fun. We'll have to do it again sometime.
All right, I think we're gonna share a little music video, and then
Oh yeah.
we're gonna we're gonna get moving here. 216 Zay is almost at 1,000 subs. If you haven't checked him out, check him out now. He's a friend of the Owls. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Stevie on the beat, what's good?
Trashy, nasty. I'm trashy, nasty, make you really wanna blast me. I'm laughing all the way to the bank, and I could give a fuck what you think. Yeah, we deeper than a motherfucking shank, lil homie. I'm trashy, nasty, make you really wanna blast me. I'm laughing all the way to the bank, and I could give a fuck what you think. Yeah, we deeper than a motherfucking shank, lil homie. I came a long way from what I once was. Introverted, killing every crowd that I'm in front of. Hungry like a lost soul on the wrong bus. All I know, I gotta fill the void till my lungs bust. I wallow in the pain, cause my city is a stain, and I lose another human every day. Yo, I don't mean to be rude, but my compassion is astray. I don't wanna kiss and cuddle, I'ma smash it in her face. State of mind is off a bit, alcohol withdrawals again. I get cold chills, sweat drip from the nose tip. Shaking like it's Parkinson's, I'm sitting in the dark again. Thinking about just slitting my wrist to get this bullshit over with. But fuck this COVID shit, I'll never take the shot. You'll have to kill me where I stand, or I'll get sick until I drop. If I'm dying, it's my destiny, and that will never stop. So I'm just trying with the best of me to make it to the top. Cause I'm trashy, nasty, make you really wanna blast.